Hello, and thanks for joining me tonight. My name is Mike Tellerino. I'm going to be your host for tonight's podcast. My host is Ricky. He's with us right up there in the top right. And I also got Bob White. He is the coordinator of the Orphan Car Show, correct?
That is correct.
Tell us when this event's going to take place.
This is going to be Saturday, September 28th at the Croatian Cultural Club in Joliet on Clement Street.
Now, this is all about cars that they don't manufacture anymore, correct?
Correct. No Chevys, no Fords, no Dodges. But
Really?
if you look at our recent times, you figure brands like Oldsmobile, Pontiac, Saturn, Saab, Mercury, Plymouth, and we start going back a little bit. The AMC cars, Nash, Hudson, Edsel, DeSoto, Kaiser, Fraser. We've already got a pre-registration for a Checker from
No
Kalamazoo,
kidding.
Michigan. Well, the guys from around here, but the cars were built in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
That's amazing. Bob, what is your favorite classic car out of all these cars that they don't make anymore? What's your
That's
favorite?
that's a little bit like asking which one of your kids, or worse yet, grandkids, which one do you like the best? Uh,
I like them all.
oh, absolutely. And the thing is, we get such a terrific variety of cars. Last year we had 115 show up. The gamut ranged every one of the awards that we hand out is the promoter's choice, which is one where I go around and pick one that I think is really, really different. And there
Right.
was somebody with I believe it was a 77 AMC Matador with the Barcelona interior, which was pretty rare. Very cool, and it's something you just don't see ever.
Bob, what do you think led to there's like I guess it's the Edsel that's no longer manufactured. Is that one of them?
Oh, Edsel was only a 3-year wonder from 59 to
Okay.
60.
What causes them to be discontinued? Do you know?
Well, there's a lot of different things. From my own personal standpoint, being a little bit of an Oldsmobile fanatic for more years than I want to think about, there were different missteps, management missteps, I'll say. Same thing with Pontiac, actually. And if you look at other ones like Mercury, way back, Mercury really had its own identity. It was something where they could justify the additional money to buy a new Mercury.
Right.
And then it became just more or less a Ford with a different grill and tail lights, and it's kind of hard to justify the extra expenditure at that point.
Yeah. Rick, what's your favorite classic car? Do you have
Classic.
one?
I gotta go with the Barracuda. I mean, or the
Ooh,
yeah, Barracuda. I mean, my grandfather owned one. He's been tracking his serial number for years now, trying to buy it back, and no one will budge on it. So
ooh.
I gotta go with that one.
So they
That's
don't make them anymore, huh?
They don't,
no.
and it was. I think he had a limited run of the color. It was that almost the Challenger purple.
Oh, plum
yeah.
crazy.
Oh yeah, he went full on with it.
Actually, a lot of people don't realize this. The Barracuda actually was on the streets before the Mustang.
Yep.
Not by much, maybe about a month, but they still beat the Mustang to the market. It's just that Ford did a little better job of promoting it. Funny because just a couple nights ago, I was at a cruise night down at Stone City VFW, and there was a young lady there with a 70 Cuda in Panther Pink.
Wow.
And that is a very legit color from Chrysler for 1970.
Panther
Completely
Pink?
legit. Oh, yes. Not Mary Kay. It was, but back then they did so many neat colors. The plum crazy, the Panther
Really?
Pink.
What it was.
They put some really neat colors on those cars.
How do you determine? I'm not a car buff at all, so this is all Greek to me. So how did they determine the price of these so if you had an antique vehicle like one of these that they don't matter, how do you know what they're worth today? Is there some kind of market
Well,
analysis for these?
there's a couple of things. Haggerty Insurance does have a value guide that you can look at. Old Cars Weekly publishes a value guide quarterly. you can go through, look at auction results. I always figure any old car is only worth what you can get somebody to pay for it.
Exactly.
Right now on Hemming's website, and Hemming's Motor News, a terrific magazine if you're in the market for something, but they've got a car advertised on their website, a 69 Dodge a Dodge Monaco wagon for $38,000.
Wow.
But nowadays wagons are almost as hard to find as the two-door hardtops and convertibles that we always thought were the big cars to have. But because so many wagons got used up in demo derbies and that type of thing, they're getting pretty hard to find anymore.
I think the closest you're going to get to a newer wagon nowadays is somewhere along the lines of a Subaru, like Outback or something like that. I think that's the closest you're going to get.
Unfortunately, that's true. There are a couple that are sold in Europe. Ford, I hate to say it, Ford actually has a Mondeo that they sell in China.
Yep.
And I don't know if they've got it in Europe as well, but I believe that's available in a wagon too. And it's just such a neat car.
I know
wish
BMW
they sold it here.
So there is like a Kelly Blue Book for
yes.
these cars.
Correct.
Yeah, that's got to be an expensive hobby.
It can be.
I know there is a big car auction that's televised. I think they do it a couple of times a year. I forget the name of it. My Uncle Paul and my grandfather go to it every single time. And big money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. I mean, big money.
Mecum is a big one. They've got one, I know, in Arizona. I think they do one in Chicago too. But yeah, a lot of those cars that go through auction go pretty good chunk of change.
Oh yeah, especially the rarer ones.
Yes. And
Bob,
sometimes sometimes you get ones where there's just something very unusual. There's a young guy that has a restoration shop between Minooka and Morris, second generation Pontiac addict, really great kid. And in his shop, he had the most rare 1970 GTO Judge color. It's a really beautiful, almost like an aqua. I've certainly never seen one before that myself in that color, but there's a few out there.
That's amazing what these cars look. I mean, they're beautiful. I know for me, not being a car buff or enthusiast, I just like looking at them because they're just unique and have their own style.
Oh yeah. Well, for so many years, the like a GM, for example, each division had their own style. There were certain, when you had the days of, let's say, a Bill Mitchell, who was their vice president in charge of styling, they had identities, and it was so easy because you'd be able to tell, okay, maybe you're going down the street, hey, wait a minute, what is that? Well, that must be a new Chevelle, or that must be a new Le Mans. You could tell a lot easier. Unfortunately, that also costs money, and they got away from a lot of that.
Right.
Yes.
What, in your opinion, because you're really into this, what of all these makes and models, what do you think that one car that really made an impact?
That's pretty tough because really a lot of them had, in their own way, they had a product, a model. My wife, for example, has a 66 Toronado, which was the first modern front-wheel drive car in the U.S. And now today, almost so many cars are front-wheel drive. And that made a huge impact. Of course, Pontiac had the really terrific cars like the Grand Prix, the GTO. They built a really strong performance image. And of course, let's face it, for the Chevy fans out there, the Corvette's America's sports car. And of course, when the Mustang was first introduced, it just took the public by storm. They couldn't keep up with the production of those.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, it was. Lee Iacocca was the president of Ford at the time and did an absolutely amazing job promoting it. So many ways.
What are some of the features in some of these antique cars or discontinued cars that they don't have anymore in the newer cars?
Well, AM/FM radio, 8-track, cassette.
Oh yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of your older cars had crank windows. You figure even air conditioning was still an option for so many years,
Right.
even on the
Even the
high
wood
end cars like a
interior.
Cadillac or an Imperial.
Even the wood interior, I think, was a little bit more authentic.
Yes,
It wasn't as fake as it is nowadays.
there were some beautiful, and if you go real far back, there was
Everything
real
is
wood.
plastic today.
Oh yeah, and actually, some of your British cars, it was literally real wood.
Yes.
And that's one of those things too. I had somebody call a couple of years ago and ask, by the way, are foreign cars okay? There's a lot of foreign orphans. I mean, from Great Britain, you've got Triumph, Humber, Singer. There's a lot of them. Germany, NSU. So there are a number of foreign cars out there too that are orphans as well.
Bob, when you are building one of these cars or restoring them, it's got to be impossible to find some of the parts that they need. How hard is that?
It depends on whether you're talking mechanical or body. Mechanical, a lot of the stuff is pretty easy to find yet. There was a fair amount of commonality. If you've got, let's say, a Mercury, beautiful because the Ford parts are real easy to find. Body parts, trim can get pretty expensive. A good friend of mine had a 65 Olds Delta 88 convertible, and he had a couple of side emblems that really weren't in too good a shape. And when he saw what a vendor wanted for new old stock ones, he decided the old ones were probably going to be okay.
Yeah, I could relate to that. But is there a company that specializes in hard to get parts?
Oh, yeah. There are a number of different ones for Oldsmobiles, for example. We're real lucky because Fusick Automotive out in Connecticut, fantastic people to work with. They come up with a lot of different things. There are some things that they obviously don't, but for almost every car, I know for the Pontiac folks, there's a couple of companies out there do a lot of good parts, reproduction parts, even your body parts, fenders, bumpers. One of the things, and let's face it, some of the metallurgy was not nearly as good back then as it is now.
Right.
In fact, when I bought my Cutlass in 1978, the trunk lid was already rusted, as they did. Right front fender was rusted at the bottom, which was typical, and a little bit in the quarters.
Right.
They just didn't have the metallurgy. And here in the Salt Belt, obviously, they did get quite a bit of exposure to salt too, which didn't help.
I would think so. Yeah.
I think nowadays too, the fabrication can do wonders. The technology is advanced so much that they can almost reproduce some of these parts from somebody's garage almost without having to have an assembly line create everything. So you can fabricate some parts that look original just to get the look out of it.
Right. And one nice thing too is depending on the body part in the car, there are some vendors out in Arizona, for example, Desert Valley Auto Parts.
Yes.
That has rust-free metal.
Oh yeah.
And the metal is fantastic. Don't even think about an interior from out there because the high temperature in the sun has just destroyed the interiors.
Cracking and destroying everything.
But if you can get the metal, that's certainly something.
Yes.
Bob, if you could bring any one of these cars back to production, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to go a lot of bias here, and it would have to be I don't know. I don't want to say the Oldsmobile much as
I was going to say, you're an Oldsmobile guy.
Yeah. The only trouble is it would be so hard in today's climate to really make it do it right. I think and I've had a few Pontiacs in the day too. I would almost go with Pontiac, but go back to a real performance image like they had at one time.
Yeah.
And if any of my Oldsmobile friends are out there, well, sorry guys.
How these car shows, do they help to continue and preserve the collectability of these cars?
Kind of interesting between the shows. We also, one of the things I like about the show is it gives a chance to get our clubs a little recognition. In the case of our Oldsmobile, the Oldsmobile Club of America, the National Club has been around since 1972. which was ironically their 75th anniversary of Oldsmobile. Our Illinois chapter has been around since 1980, and I've been around that long in the club.
Wow.
And my wife and I have dual citizenship. We also belong to the Wisconsin chapter.
Okay.
Truthfully, the car, I've told a number of people through the years, the cars are kind of a red herring. The real treat is the people. Because we have just met so many wonderful people. We've made so many good friends. That's kind of half of it, actually.
I do believe the car shows and everything start bringing in, once you start getting involved, you can actually introduce the younger generations into the classics, and you can actually keep the dream alive. You can keep the old stuff kicking.
And, it's funny because sometimes the younger people have a little different, I'll say, opinions on cars.
Yes.
We had the one show that our local American Legion put on a couple of years ago, and there was a young kid there with a Honda Civic. And most people my age with all this gray hair would just walk right by and go, what the heck is that thing doing here? But I stopped and talked to the kid. He's a nice kid. And he felt, he's almost embarrassed. Well, this is my driver. Hey, great. They were all drivers at one time.
Right.
And, I really wanted to encourage him to stay involved and just, keep the dream alive. And one of my former coworkers kind of gave me grief when I told him about it. And I said, those Civics like that young kid had are, for today's generation, a little bit like the 57 Chevys were when we were a kid.
Right.
Fortunately, too, the older stuff is going to have to go away at some point. I mean, nothing is going to last forever. So some of the stuff that's being introduced into some of the shows now is going to be the car clubs of the future.
Right. And, for many of us with the orphans, it's kind of tough. I mean, Oldsmobile, we've been orphaned now since 2004. And if you look at, but there's some of the clubs out there, the orphan clubs, that are really strong. Studebaker has a very, very strong club. And Studebaker was last built in 1965. Hudson, I met some real nice people with the Hudson Club. Hudson got merged with Nash in 1954, and the last Hudson came out in 1957. So they've been going a long time, but there's still a number of people that still have that drive. The big thing is getting the younger people to be, really get enthused about any of these.
Is there, you think the younger generation, are they getting into this, or is this something that with the older guys, it's going to die out?
Some are. Their tastes are different. When I think back, I'll say 40 years ago, things like Model A Fords were still very popular. Now the Model A's, the prices are they're bargain priced because none of the young kids want them, and probably none of them could drive a Model T. But, as I look on some of the stuff now, so much is so expensive. And honestly, when you see these auctions, people look at the prices and go, I can't get into that.
Yeah, I was going to say that would have to prohibit a lot of younger people. They don't have that bankroll.
Oh, sure.
To get involved with this. It's an expensive hobby.
Oh, yeah. But if you dig a little bit, there are still some surprising bargains out there. If you look, for example, at American Motors Rambler American, you can get something that can get you in at as an entry level car, get you going to the car shows, get some. And the American Motors owners have a real strong club too. But it's something where you can get in, just get the feel for it without breaking the bank.
Yeah.
But if you think you're going to go out and find a really cheap 67 Chevelle, not going to happen.
We just had somebody put in that Pontiac has an extremely strong following and showing a lot of clubs that are building Pontiac, Michigan. The gentleman that just chimed in, Terry Mitchell, good friend of mine, he's got a 67 Pontiac GTO that is just out of this world. I'll tell you, this car, let me tell you, I'm not a car crazed person, but this car is, it's immaculate. It's one of the cleanest cars I've seen.
And 67 GTO, there wasn't a bad line on it. And one of the things, in fact, was at that cruise night a couple nights ago, there was a gentleman there with a 69 Firebird. And I had forgotten from years ago, On the inside of the window sticker back then, Pontiac was so cool because on the inside of the sticker that you'd see inside the car when you were looking at it brand new, they put on there, if you think this new Pontiac looks great, just wait till you drive it.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're thinking about investing in something like that, what are some of the things you should really be careful about?
Well, there's a lot of things. One, obviously the condition. And there are two schools of thought. If you are very, very good working with a vehicle, obviously, if you can do mechanical work, maybe you can pick up something where the body is good, but mechanically it needs work. And if you're good at that, great. There are some people that will say, well, your best bet is to buy one that's completely done, ready to go, because that way you don't have to spend a lot of money on it.
Right.
That's good too. So, and the other thing is a really solid inspection of the car, making sure, take a magnet, make sure there's no surprises lurking in those quarters. And of course, looking underneath, and just, and some of the high end cars, like your friends got the GTO, they get just fantastic money for those. But then you start looking at numbers matching, where you're comparing like your VIN, your engine block, all these different things to make sure that, it's legit, because then obviously the value goes up quite a bit. But if you get somebody that blew the motor up when it was 2 years old, which happened with a lot of those, well, then obviously it's a little harder.
Everybody's a NASCAR driver as soon as they get past the car.
Well, I don't tell your friend I said this, but I had a teacher in high school that had a 67 GTO that he bought new, gorgeous car, black interior. And I mean, he kept it just beautiful. In 74, he decided that, well, he needed more of a family car, and ended up buying a Buick LeSabre, and he sold the GTO to one of the kids that was in one of his classes. It lasted about a month. And then it went around a telephone pole, and just heartbreaking for a lot of us.
Oh, it's terrible.
He took such beautiful care of it.
My cousin Jackie, when he was in the Army, he bought a new 67 GTO, and he came home with it. And it's the first time I got to really take a look at it. And the car's just got a look about it that, if I could buy any two cars in the world, it would be a 67 GTO and a 63 Corvette split T window.
That's a good
Those are my
choice.
two all-time favorite cars, bar none.
Especially with the 327 fuel injected and the 4-speed, yeah. But the GTO,
the original.
What would a 63 Corvette go for if you had a guess?
Oh, it's going to be 6 digits for sure.
Really?
I just without really going in and looking, I don't get the price guide, so I don't have that nearby.
Well, why don't you give us a little more information?
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
My one cousin has a 68 GTO, which I've always loved the looks of those too. It was all new body, and I like them all. What can I say?
Yeah, you sound like you do.
It's an addiction. I'll admit it.
Oh, well, you know what? I'm a motorcycle guy. I'm a Harley guy. And, there's no limit to what I do with that bike. It's something that you enjoy doing. It's just, I look forward to working. I don't physically work on my bike. I'm not mechanically inclined at all, believe me. But it's just something that makes you feel good. I guess when you drive one of those vintage cars, it's got to make you feel good. Take you back to a better time.
I coming home from that cruise night a couple nights ago, and the top down, and just, there is a feeling. I didn't feel as old as my driver's license said. But
there is a good thing as a time machine.
Rick, what's your favorite? Rick, what's your favorite car?
The Barracuda. It looks the nicest. It's between that and the original Mach 1. The body style of the original Mach 1, I can't I can't deny I had an '04 Mach 1 at one point, but that required way too much work, and I didn't have the time for it. So unfortunately, I had to get rid of it. But the Barracuda and the Mach 1, I think, look the best in my opinion.
Bob, why don't we?
The
Why don't
Barracuda
we?
was hard to beat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Just a sharp car.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It sounded nice coming from the factory. It looked absolutely gorgeous. You just absolutely could not beat it.
Bob, why don't you tell us a little bit about the car show one more time? Where could they go to get some information? You have a Facebook page. Tell us how we could find us.
I'm not sure if it's on our Facebook page. We do have an Illinois Valley Oldsmobile Club webpage. It is September 28th from 10 to 3. Goodie bags and participant plaque for the first 75 entries, although it's probably going to be a little better than that. But there's special awards for participant choice, our IVOC Memorial Award, and doing something a little different this year. Not just one participant choice, but to celebrate the recent Olympics in Paris where the U.S. did so well, we're going to have a gold, silver, and bronze.
Really?
Because sometimes they're not going to be real gold, silver, and bronze, but giving away 3 awards, because with that many really beautiful cars, sometimes there are pretty close tabulation at the end.
It's always hard.
So what does it cost to enter the show?
Pre-registration is only $12. Day of the event, most people with the old cars tend to wait till the day of the event because we're going to see what the weather looks like. It's only $15, a bargain. And one of the biggest things here, every year we have a split the pot drawing, which is always nice. You got a chance to win some money, and I've got a couple of fabulous consolation prizes. We have had a number of different charities which have been the recipient of the half of the 50-50. And in the past, we've had American Cancer Society, the Heart Association, Lightways Hospice. But last year we had Canines for Veterans.
Yes, you did.
Shay came out with the dog, and he is just such a terrific guy. And you know what? That was the biggest split the pot drawing we've had yet. So
well, I got news for you.
Made it real easy. We wanted to have you guys again this year.
Well, we're going to be there. And Rick is going to be with me.
Cool.
Right, Rick? Rick just got, we just made Rick the spokesperson to go out and talk on the behalf of K9.
Cool.
So he's doing an amazing job. He's doing such a good job. I asked him to be my co-host. I'm so proud of him and what he's done, how he's bettered himself, and he's come such a long way.
You know, to be honest, Mike, we had, and I don't remember who it was that came out, but at our Lions Club a few years ago, we had representative from Canines, and everybody in the club was so impressed. And that was one of the drivers there, as far as I was concerned, too, because, you know, doing some really, really good things there for veterans. And we've got an awful lot of folks and I know in our club that are veterans, too. So they're always very happy to step up to the plate on that.
Well, I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be a huge success, and I can't thank you enough for having K9 be a part of it. It's truly a gift for what you're doing for us. Thank you so much.
Well, Mike, I'll be honest, the pleasure is all mine.
Well, I want to thank you for being my guest tonight and spreading the word about this amazing car show that I'm sure, you know, I just so nice to go see these older cars that they just don't make anymore. How often do you get a chance to see them up front and personal?
Yep. And if Rick's going to be there, I will warn the young lady with the Barracuda if she comes to, you know, just kind of have a rag there to wipe the drool.
Rick is gonna he's gonna be eating his heart out. Bob, thank you for being my guest tonight. Rick, thank you for co-hosting with me.
Yes, sir.
It's just gonna be a great event. So I just think everybody should get out there and take a look at these cars that you just don't see anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great opportunity to bring back a little bit of history.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. Appreciate it.
Well, God bless you so much for what you're doing, keeping those cars out in front so everybody don't forget what they look like. Rick, thank you for being my co-host tonight, buddy.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night, Mike.